You're listening to the Soulless Minions of Orthodoxy, alternative DVD commentaries. Our movie for today is called A Walk to Remember from 2002, starring Shane West, Mandy Moore, and directed by Adam Shankman. This is, of course, based off of the novel by Nicholas Sparks. I am not alone in the Soulless Minions studio this evening. I am with a very special guest, Susan. Say hello, Susan.
Hello, everyone.
Well, thanks for joining me. Justin isn't here once again, but I don't expect Justin would have much to say about this movie. So I'm very excited to be doing this because we both have recently read the novel which the movie was based, and Susan just finished watching the movie for the first time all the way through, and she was very affected by it. So I'm curious to see what she's going to say about it and also how it compares to the novel. I'll, of course, throw in my own 2 cents. But let's go ahead and get started. If you'd like to watch the movie with us, go ahead, cue up your A Walk to Remember DVD, press play, and when you see the Warner Brothers logo fade to black, go ahead and press pause. In a moment, I'll give you a countdown. I'll say 3, 2, 1, unpause, and when I do so, we'll both unpause together, and we'll watch the movie in sync. All right, here comes the countdown. 3, 2, 1, unpause. All right, I think this is the Pandora logo, I think, if I remember my studios correctly. Yeah, it is Pandora. All right, so we should be in sync. Well, Susan, let me get your first impressions of this film, because you just finished watching it literally like 5 minutes ago. So how do you think this movie compares to the book?
I read the book probably 6 weeks ago, so it's not quite as fresh as the movie is, which Josh just said, and I finished watching it about 5 minutes ago. Initially, the biggest difference for me was although they don't reference time, what year it is, you don't get the impression it's in the 70s, which is when the story took place.
I believe it's the 50s.
Oh, in the 50s, excuse me. In the 50s, when the story took place, which gives it a different reference in time. But I did find that the same issues are brought out in the movie as are brought out in the book in terms of the times that we live in. No matter what generation you're in, teens are basically the same. In the movie, they were basically the same as in the novel, so that's good to see. They did take quite a bit of license and eliminated some things that I thought were good for the characters in the story. I wish they had not eliminated. I would like to watch the movie again and think in terms of where I might have edited it differently to bring in some of the information from the book that was left out of the movie. But overall, the quality that the book had, tugging at your heartstrings, and the main theme of what's really valuable in life and how much faith can restore even the most lost people, rang as true in the movie as it did in the novel.
That's very well said. I tend to agree. I think my feelings on this film have changed. I have to admit, when I first saw this, I was not the biggest fan of this movie, and I have to admit, not the biggest fan of the book. Well, I'll get to that in a moment, but I want to talk about this opening scene. I want to get a little more screen specific. This opening scene here was completely manufactured for the film. This does not happen in the book at all. And as we said, the book takes place in the past, in the 50s. And the book actually begins with a narration from the main character, from Landon, as he's an older man. And he's reflecting back on his life as he's walking through his hometown of Beaufort. Is that how it's pronounced? I pronounced it Beaufort.
I pronounced it Beaufort as
well. So did I. But I believe in the movie they call it Beaufort. But Beaufort, Tomatoes, Tomatoes. It actually begins that way, and we flash back to him in his youth. This, I could see why they, for film's sake, this film is a different medium than books, of course. It's told visually, and you need to be able to grab the audience right from the get-go. You need some kind of hook, something to establish the main character, Landon. Shane West here is a bad boy, but still, while retaining the aspects of the book, which was him growing from this, not necessarily a bad guy, but from kind of a listless, superficial character. And this scene does it well enough, I believe. I think it's very reminiscent of films from the past, say like Rebel Without a Cause or The Heavenly Kid, where it's a group of friends and they're trying to initiate someone in there. It's very reminiscent of that. So I was kind of surprised that they went with something like this, because modern movies these days, they don't. I don't know if they portray teenagers in the same kind of vein anymore, of being a part of these cliques. I don't know. Did you think this scene worked?
I felt it reflected more a time that's closer to the 50s than to the year that it was made in, 2002. Since it doesn't have a time reference, but everything else tells me that it's much more contemporary than the novel. So I also felt that this was a little contrived, not really reflective of what teenagers are like now. They don't tend to do things like this. Also, the characters at this point were caricatures, which I found somewhat annoying. And
you mean the characters of his friends here?
Yes. And I also, it spoke a lot in this scene about how he was really the sole nice guy. He stayed longer than anybody else. And so it's starting to paint him as a little bit different, but I felt that they could have done it a little differently. It also betrayed the book because creating completely new situations like this that didn't occur in any way, shape, or form just felt manipulative to me.
Yeah, a little bit. But also, we were discussing that this movie was actually made for another audience. The book was tailored to a female audience, say in 30s or 40s. This movie was made for teenagers, for teenage girls, so they're gonna have to change things up a bit. So the feel of it is a little different, but as you said, the essence of the themes are still there. Some of the characters are still there. The character of Eric, his best friend, is actually, I think, his only friend who has the same name, which is the black guy. Not black in the book. This is their token black guy. Which is fine. I wish I didn't have to attribute that, but it's true. But he's, I think, the only character of his friends that has the same name, I think. His other friend, I think his name is Lou in the book, the kind of hothead. Here, in this movie, he's a hothead. In the book, not so much. He's just kind of a jerk. In this movie, he's just like a little over the top for cinematic sensibilities, I guess you could say. And it's kind of a cliche thing, give the hothead a muscle car. I don't recall him driving at all in the book at all. I don't think.
I don't either.
If he drove, I think he drove his mother's car. It was nothing like that.
Put your hands on the wheel.
But still, the movie has retained some of the elements of the South. The author is from the South. Nicholas Sparks is from the South. Obviously, that's influenced most of his writing. Mm-hmm. Most of it takes place in the South. So it's obviously a big a big factor to him, which is fine. It's not always the case with some writers, but.
And we have Daryl Hannah for the first time making an appearance.
My leg really hurts today.
I don't know if I'm the only one, but at first I had to do a double take to see if that was Daryl Hannah, because the Daryl Hannah I know did not have the same lips that she appears to have now. So that was a little distracting to me. I was interested that they really downplayed her character. She played a much bigger role, thankfully, in his life in the book than she does in this movie. Her character is it's a token character, so that we show that the mother is around. And I miss that, because he does have a good relationship and a strong one with his mother, and it doesn't come across here the way it should.
I guess you're right. In the novel, she's. I don't know. I think actually, I kind of disagree with you on that. In the novel, she's present, but not as supportive as in the movie. I don't think. She's just kind of there. She's just a presence.
Yeah, I get the movie. The movie leaves me with that she's just there.
Well, I mean, I was opposite of you, is what I meant to say. Is that
yes? And
okay?
But I felt that she was just there in the movie, whereas she may not have supported everything he did, because of course she was still rearing him. This was her child. She was trying to get him through a difficult time, but she was present. This mother, I sense, is just there because you have to have some parent there. I would have liked to have seen her role a little bit stronger, a little bit meatier.
Yeah, but I like Daryl Hannah, though. It was nice to see her back. Although, is that a wig she's wearing? Because it certainly doesn't look like real hair. It
really was distracting for me at first, because she hardly had any resemblance to the Daryl Hannah I remember from really just a few years ago. So I don't think that is her. Is the color of her hair?
Well, I know she's a blonde. I guess they wanted to change her look to make it look more southern. I guess I'm not sure.
Or older, so she would look more like a mother.
I don't know. I just, to me, it throws me off, because I was so familiar with Daryl Hannah not looking like that, and I was just like, oh, okay, what happened? I was like, all right, why did they do that? I just felt it was a bit of a mistake.
Thank you.
I agree.
We were talking over the scene in the church there where we got introduced to Hegbert, who I don't think is called Hegbert in the movie. He's just referred to as her father. He's not, given a... Yeah, but he's Hegbert, which is Mandy Moore's father in the film, and we got to see her sing for the first time, which doesn't happen. Obviously this movie is starring Mandy Moore, so she's going to be singing, right? What did you think of her singing?
At least not today.
I think it captured the essence of the character. It wasn't a belting voice. It wasn't strong, but it was very ethereal, which of course her character was. So I thought it was very fitting. I actually have someone who sings very similar to her. It reminded me of her. She has a personality very similar to the character in this story.
You start experiencing other things.
Well, let's see. Nicholas Sparks is also very...
Don't blow it, man.
He's very keen on writing people of faith and religious aspects and stuff like that into his stories. I've recently started reading The Notebook, and it's in there too. And it was really heavily present in the novel, in A Watch Remember. In the novel, it was very present. And here, this movie, I thought it was kind of interesting that they decided to take even that aspect of it and bring it to the screen, because that can be a very dividing issue for a lot of people. But they did tone it down, You know,
Oh, yes,
they
they did.
They did tone it down, but they kept the core of it intact. The fact that she is a very faithful person. Her father's a minister in this small town, and most of her actions are based off of her faith, and they kept that in there, but it's still very much toned down. But I'm surprised that they even did that, because a lot of people might not respond to that very well. And since this was going to be a mainstream film for a teenage audience, mostly a teenage audience, I thought maybe that they would try to make it a little more generic and try and maybe just eliminate that entirely, but they didn't, which I thought was interesting. I don't know. Do you think it was a good choice?
I would have liked to have seen more of her religious background explored in this movie, but I agree with you. The people that it was geared to, I think they would have taken a calculated risk at making it any stronger than they did in the movie. So I think if you had to be on a seesaw or a teeter-totter, they did a good job of doing it. You definitely walked away from this knowing that her faith is what got her through, but without it being, the number 2 subject matter.
Good morning, Landon.
Yeah, we've actually been set up here with what will lead into him being a part of the play. Yeah, that's got to be a wig. That can't be a real hair. I don't know. It looks fake. But with him being a co-star in the play and then falling in love with her and whatnot, of course, that's not how it occurred in the novel. He actually was led from his father to run for student council president. And one of the things he had to do as the president of the school council was go to a school dance. And he didn't want to go stag. So he decided to ask anyone, and eventually landed on Jamie because she was just available, I guess. And yeah, the character of Landon in the novel didn't see her quite as the outcast, I don't think. Are you agreeing with me?
I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah, the outcast that she's portrayed in the movie, although she is portrayed as an outcast by his friends, by a lot of people. He seems kind of in the middle. He doesn't really seem to care. He knows that she's different, but he doesn't seem to really care which way or other. If she's a dork or if she's weird or not, he's just like, well, I need someone to go with, and she's a girl, I'll go with her. So, and I found that her character here, as opposed to the novel, was a bit more outspoken. She had a line in the previous scene. I think it was, how would he find your brain or something like that? Something to insult one of the characters.
Derogatory.
To insult his intelligence. And the Jamie, I was like, whoa, that's not the Jamie from the book. She would never say anything like that. She would never take a shot like that. She would just did what she did in the movie, which is just smile and say thank you and treat everything as if, everything's okay. She's not going to acknowledge the fact that she's being talked down to make the most of the situation. And there was also a trait that was in the book that I really liked that they didn't put in the movie, which was she had a tick, which was every time she got nervous or she didn't know what to say, she would tug at her hair, kind of. And Landon eventually picked up on the fact that she does that when she's unsure of herself, and he noticed that a few times before he figured it out. And I thought that would have been interesting to see that here.
I agree. I would have liked to have seen that carried over, but they had to do something in order to get all the necessary information into the film. So what got cut was how long it took the two to really come to terms with each other. It was nowhere near as quick or as easy as it appears in this movie. It was take 3 steps forward, 2 back, 1 forward, 3 back. It was definitely a dance of adjustment between the two of them, and their resistance to each other lasted a lot longer. But of course, you just don't have the time factor in a movie that you do with a book.
Yeah, there was or in the play here, which is much different in the novel. But first, I just wanted to talk about that scene we were in just a moment ago where he was tutoring. He was tutoring with her, which is another thing that was manufactured. The equivalent to that in the novel was him and she going to the orphanage, I would say.
Yes.
Yeah, she was a volunteer at the orphanage, and she loved to do it. She went there, she read to them and visited with the kids and
did fundraisers for them.
Yeah, things like that. So I guess they decided to. I guess I don't know why they would change it. I mean, I think it could still work if they decided to go with that, but they wanted to show that Landon in the film is, even though he is a bad boy, he's still intelligent. So he's able to tutor this kid, I guess, as a way to just show that he's accessible in a way. Maybe a more of shorthand, I guess, compared to this to the book I meant. But
I'm breathing it, drinking it all in.
yeah, initially in the novel, the play was actually not the same. It was completely different. It was a play written by
Mr. Carter,
Mandy Moore's father, by Jamie's father, and that was a big deal.
All right,
So I think it was. I don't know why they decided to change that, honestly. Here it was. This play is written by this other student, and I'm not sure if it works quite the same way emotionally. It's quite a thing of redemption, the fact that she is acting in the play written by her father. And it means a lot because the father, Hegbert, as he's called in the novel, wrote the play based off of an experience he had because he is a single parent and the mother died in childbirth. And he decided to write the play based off of his experience with that. So at first he wrote the play because he was unhappy with, Scrooge, Christmas Carol. I guess he was unhappy with the fact that it was so popular and the fact that this person needed to be changed by ghosts from the past, present, and future. Instead, he wrote it, he made his own story. He's like, I think that faith can change you in a different way, and so he decided to use the device of an angel. And the angel changed the main character, and he realized that his surviving daughter was all he had left of his late wife, and so he should, instead of continually falling down the well and remembering her death and not being able to move on, look at what he has, his daughter. And he eventually learns that lesson from the angel in the story. And the angel, of course, is played by his daughter in the movie. She plays the angel in the play, which Landon plays the character of Tom Thornton, which is the same character name in this movie, in this play that they made, which seems to be something that takes place in the 20s era.
Then I'd have to kill you.
But, why they decided to change it, I don't know. I mean, maybe thought it would be hip, I guess, to show young high school kids slapping it up in the 1920s era, I guess. That kind of jazz time frame, I guess. I'm not sure. But it was an interesting take.
Your words have been heard, and not
I don't know, Susan, what did you think of their changing of the play from the novel to the movie, where they have that kind of roaring 20 sensibility?
Out of the rain and into my club. That wasn't just a coincidence, was it?
Again, I thought it was
You know you're the only
not contrived, but I felt that how the book was more in depth and truer to the characters, especially her character, had more significance to the overall story than it did with the Roaring Twenties theme. So I was disappointed.
Yeah, I thought it was. It made it more mainstream. I mentioned that maybe they were just trying to tailor it to a younger audience in that sense. Maybe if it was made for the audience that the book was made for, maybe they would have kept it intact. I'm not really sure, but we're gonna have a callback to this at the end of the movie, which at first I didn't like. I thought it was a little cheesy, the handshake they just did.
Yes.
But watching it a second time, actually, it's like, that's not bad. The fact that throughout all of this, his friend Eric was his kind of support throughout all of this. The one that was like, hey, we joke around in the crowd and when we're all together, but I'm a real guy too, deep down, which was nice.
Yeah.
And
Okay, I'll pray for you.
I'll pray for you. That was kind of interesting. It's like, that's how I'll help you. That was interesting. But we went past
I enjoyed that line, by the way.
I'll pray for you.
Yes.
Why so?
Just the look on her face. It was the last thing in the world he expected, and it was her faith came through, and the fact that she could give it as well as take it.
Wait, hold on. Big line. You have to promise you won't fall in love with me.
Yes.
Very big line.
Yes.
Delivered differently in the novel, of course.
Okay.
Sorry,
I'll see you
continue.
this afternoon after school.
I just felt it was very effective. The look on her face when she said it, she knew that he wasn't going to. He wouldn't expect her to say something like that.
I think
What
the
about forgiveness?
Hegbert character here, since he's back on screen, I think. Well, actually, he was a lot older in the book. Don't you recall?
Yes.
Yeah, he was a lot older. He was he looked to be almost 70 or something like that. Because as I was mentioning, in the novel, the mother was described to have died in childbirth, or something close to that, or not shortly thereafter. And actually here, he's never allowed inside the house when Hegbert is not around. That's a big deal. I guess maybe it's a Southern thing. I don't know, but it's a big deal.
It was also in the 50s.
That's true. That's true.
Rarely were children home alone to begin with. And if they were, you never had your friends in. You stayed outside.
Well, it's the fact that it's young man and young girl. He doesn't want the two of them together. So all of the conversations they have take place on their porch. If the father isn't around, which he isn't during the daytime, she says, well, you can't come inside, but we can talk out on the porch. So most of their conversations take place out there. And he and the father don't have this kind of
one thing straight, Mr. Carter.
Open adversarial relationship, although it is adversarial in the novel. It's not dictated to us like this, where they just openly have this kind of like, I don't like you, you don't like me mentality. And you better, follow my rules or else you're out of here. Which was...
The depth of relationship between her father is much richer in the novel than they give it time in the movie, which another thing I was disappointed in. You still get that they are very close, but I would have liked to have seen a little more time spent on their relationship and just how special it was and how that relationship enabled him to go on later in his life.
Well, here's something else. They actually kept but tweaked this notion of the cemetery. This is not a convention of Jamie, but of Landon. He was the one who goes to the cemetery and frequently with his friends, and did things that I was a bit. Maybe you can clear this up on, because we haven't talked about the book yet to each other. They were doing things that I guess were supposed to be considered. I wouldn't say risque, but just foolhardily, like eating beans and stuff like that. Do you recall this? They were doing weird things that I guess was just supposed to be breaking the rules back then, and they would eat things called hush puppies. Do you recall this?
I was thinking I said 6 weeks. It's 6 months, not 6 weeks. So it's not coming back to me quite as clearly as it is to Josh.
Well, they would eat hush puppies. I know those are shoes. But I was a bit... But
they're fritter type foods.
Oh, that's what they are? Because
Yes.
I kept reading, we ate hush puppies, and I'm like,
It's
what?
a cornmeal.
Okay.
Sometimes has vegetables in it, sometimes a meat, sometimes nothing but the cornmeal fried. They're delicious.
Okay, well, that makes more sense. I knew it was food, but I didn't know what kind. I was like, maybe that's a southern thing?
Yes.
Hush puppies? Okay, that makes sense. And here, this is another convention of just the movie, her being into astronomy.
There's too much bad shit in this
Well,
world.
I don't know, what did you think of all that?
Yeah, I won't tell that to those who suffer.
I thought it was a good avenue to bring them together.
See, this is what
I thought it
love
worked.
about
It was okay.
those legs been hiding all winter.
This is another kind of famous line, I guess, from the trailers. I don't know if it's funny or not, but it's well, it's a little cliched. See you after
Yes.
school in your dreams.
Yes.
It's
It pained me when he actually said that.
that smug smile on his face. Yeah.
He did an excellent job, but that had to be very difficult when he got that line and knew he had to say that and sell it.
There's another callback to something that's more predominant in the book. The character of Eric said, "Where's your sweater?" And that's something that's very laid down upon, much heavier in the novel. The fact that she wears this brown cardigan all the time, and they don't really play that up here. I mean, she's dressed down in the movie to look very plain. Still, she's gorgeous anyway, even when
And
she's
completely
plain.
covered.
Well, she's completely clever, but she's dressed very plainly.
Yes.
Like here, she's wearing overalls, and before she was wearing just like a plain skirt. But in the book, it's kind of transcribed that she's kind of wearing the same thing all the time, and not really given any credence as to why. It's not stated that they're poor or anything like that.
I think it's more because of her faith that she
Run minds together.
wants people to be drawn to her spirit, not to how she looks.
Well, I just
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Also, something that's was given one shot earlier was when they were on the bus, and she decided to go sit down and talk with him, and they had a cutaway to her Bible. And that's the only reference. We get, I think, a reference in
Again.
dialogue to
Yes.
it, but that's the only time we see it. And that's something that's brought up again and again in the novel.
And
It's something
again.
very, very big. She carries the Bible with her everywhere.
And a very big part of the book is not brought to this movie, and I think that was a mistake.
This was a bit. What do you think? This was a bit almost frightening. I would say the way he walks out of that house. The father.
Yes.
Did you think it was a little bit
Yes.
strong?
Yes, I did.
Well, this is something that happens a little differently in the novel from a continuity perspective. This is when he's trying to find a date for the dance he will later go on, and he's perusing through, and he goes over Jamie. Her ambition to witness a miracle. Was that her main ambition? No, her main ambition in the novel was just to get married.
In the church that her mother and father got married in.
Yeah, that's a big deal. It's never shed any light in the movie. He just asked her to marry him, but in the book, she said, I think they're talking about the future and what he wants to do, and she said, "Oh, I just want to get married," and that's a really big deal, and he thinks that's really silly.
the basket.
Of course, he says, "Oh, later I found out why it's such a big deal." But at the beginning of the commentary, I mentioned that my thoughts had changed on the movie and on the book, and I guess I'll use this opportunity
So what did we just make?
this moment to explain why. I first read the book probably about 15 years ago, and
Yes.
I did not like it at all. Why I decided to read it, I have no idea. I was just in the bookstore, and I wanted to read a love story of some kind, and I saw it sitting on the shelf, and I was like, I'll take a chance on this. Read the book flap. I was like, could be interesting. And I had never heard of Nicholas Sparks, and this was long before the book was adapted. So I was like, all right, I'll give it a chance. And And I was like, all right. Read it, and I hated it. I could not stand.
I remember.
I could not stand it at all. It was. I thought it was cheesy, melodramatic, and it was a real struggle to get through. And but as
I recall, you didn't like Sparks' writing style.
no, I did not at all. I mean, I had no idea he wasn't as well known back then as he is today. I mean, now he's practically every one of his books has been made into a movie.
Yes.
So people are very familiar with him now. Back then, I didn't know. I mean, I'm sure he was a known novelist, but he wasn't as well known in Hollywood. So I didn't like it, but I finished it because I started the book and I was like, I'm going to finish it. Come hell or high water, I'm going to finish it. So I did, and I was like, all right, terrible. And then when I found out it was being made into a movie, go ahead.
I just wanted to add, before we get too far away from this scene went on way too long, in my opinion.
You mean this montage?
Oh, yes.
Oh, about the play and everything like that?
Yes,
and
I would have liked to have seen other things brought in and a good portion of that taken out. I didn't feel it advanced the story to any great degree.
Other things like what?
Delving into the relationship with her father and just how strong it was. Her commitment to other people, I felt was important that they didn't bring into the movie. That was a very long piece that was not necessary.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're 100% right. I think that her being a selfless character was
I came to say I'm sorry.
was kind of just kind of put down. Like,
Feel better? No. I feel like shit.
Yes, I definitely, I would have loved to have seen the depth of her character. And there was almost a dance between the two of them, the two main characters, in trying to come to terms with who the other one was and why they were so drawn together and how they could complement each other, given their very different backgrounds. So to have the length of the scene that I just referred to before.
Good.
This, for example, the scene we're on right now with this young man, that was important, but again, I think it went on a bit too long. The main thing that I get from this movie is everything that occurred too quickly in the movie as opposed to in the book. The expense of time was dealt with.
You promised me we'd go to Paris.
The character development was dealt with very harshly in favor of time.
oh yeah, definitely. I think you're right. I didn't buy the her falling in love with him as much as in the book is with here. I thought it was a little too quick. A little, it's like I kept wondering, well, why does she love this guy? Why? What does he do? Exactly. I mean, other than the fact that he's a good-looking guy and he's changing his ways, but why? Why? I didn't really get that sense, other than the fact that they're both good-looking, so they come together. I didn't really get that sense.
Forgiveness either.
But I was saying about the. Oh, what you were going to say something?
Well, in the book, she's ethereal at this point. She almost looks like an angel.
Which was what she was in the initial play.
Yes.
That wasn't just a coincidence, was it?
So
Nothing's coincidence.
I was disappointed when I saw her character as opposed to the character that was painted in the book.
Yeah. Well, as I was saying about the how I felt and how my opinions have changed, I think that
Well, I don't.
it's kind of come full circle, not quite. Reading the book the second time,
All I know.
I actually enjoyed it a lot, and I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it because I got another copy of the book for you because I wanted to see how you would respond to the book because my memories of the book were just negative. So I got you a copy of the book and I said, read it, let me know what you think about it. And you loved it. I was like, okay, well then I got to read this again. And if I read it again, then we're going to have to watch the movie and do a commentary on it. even if I like it or not. But I actually found myself really enjoying the book a lot, and I read it almost in one night. I mean, it's a quick read. So, and I was just, I think Sparks has I wouldn't say profound writing style. It's not really deep.
He has a very strong voice.
But yeah, it is very strong and compelling. Very page turner, it is. Even though his writing is, I don't know what the word, I said Pollyanna-ish. I mentioned that in a way. Kind of, a little bit. But it didn't bother me as much. And I think that comes with age. I think as you get older, you become more open to things and less cynical. And back when I was a teenager, I guess I really was. And now I'm reading, I'm like, it's okay. You don't have to shut it down just because it's too clean, or because you're not, you don't share the same beliefs or whatever, because it's about faith, and that was off-putting at first. But now I was like, it's still a good story with a good theme behind it, a good moral behind it, and that's what I liked.
Something I just realized in the movie, and I don't know if it was done on purpose, but the not the teacher, the director, she was standing behind Mandy Moore, and their dresses are very, very similar, just a different color. And actually, the teacher is more ethereal in that shot than, and I just thought that was interesting visually. That it was almost the same design.
What did you think of her, all of her singing in the movie? I mean, this is our big showpiece right here. What did you think?
Well, I thought it was fine. I always kind of ache for people who have to sing all by themselves on a stage and feel like it's a natural thing to do, to break out in song in the middle of a conversation. But I did it. I enjoy her voice. I like that it's not I don't know what theatrics that people can put into their voice, where it doesn't sound natural anymore. Hers sounds very natural.
Yeah, and when I found out this movie was, when I found out the novel was going to be adapted into the movie, I was like, oh my god. I was like, what's this? This is going to be terrible. And I was very closed off to it. And I was like, I've read the book. This is going to be a terrible movie. There's no way I'm going to like it. And I got to admit, even when I first saw it, I was like, I hated the movie. I did not like it because it was so much. It was like it came from, the source material I didn't like. So I was like, how can I possibly like this movie? And rewatching the movie, I'm still not 100% sold on it, but I still enjoyed it because it had some of the elements from the book that I liked. So I think I've come around and actually to like the actor Shane West. I didn't, for the longest time, I just there was something about him that put me off. But in this movie, watching him and listening to him on the commentary track that he has on the disc, I found he seems like a nice guy. So
I think he did a very good job going between that horrible character right at the beginning to the very understanding and compassionate young man he turned into by the end of the movie.
And that's something else that also occurs in the novel, the kiss that isn't supposed to happen but does. Of course he doesn't. That's a good shot right there. Closes on the curtain on them, keeps it on them. But anyway, the kiss that is not supposed to take place, but does take place, which I thought was a rather cute way of showing his affection for her.
Interesting rewrite you did out there tonight, Carter.
Look, I did my best. Okay?
And your acting didn't suck too bad either.
And I thought, again, I just thought that the play here, that the story kind of loses something when they change it, because it loses its emotional core. It went from being something very personal from the father of Jamie to being something conventional, and I think it just kind of stripped the emotion out of that, and it's a big part of the story, the sense of understanding and moving on, growing, and that goes from the character of Hegbert to the character of Landon, and we kind of lose that when the play is changed. But in the novel, it's they instead of them going to the orphanage and let's see, they also have
People can see.
And that would ruin your reputation.
a lot of time given to the play in which they're rehearsing for, and that's turned into a montage here. But in the novel,
Books are there?
there's a lot of lead up to the play, and one of the things they do is he ends up walking her home a lot, and that's how they kind of get to know each other.
Yes.
To read all these books?
He walks her home quite a bit, and it's a very lovely way of building the character.
Jamie,
Very true to the time as well, but that
maybe
is eliminated in the movie. When Josh had asked me what,
you inspire me.
Sounds like bull.
I just lost my train of thought.
All of it.
When I had asked you something, that's all. You can't remember?
Nope.
Okay.
Jamie!
I mean, maybe you can. Well, you're trying to remember what it was you were thinking about. Maybe you can tell me what it is, being a woman, because you were kind of misty-eyed at the end of the movie.
And why would that
Yeah, you were. So maybe.
I wasn't misty-eyed. I was actually crying.
Okay, she was crying, and I remember a lot of younger girls having that same kind of
You want to be with me too?
reaction to the movie. So maybe, I don't cry at movies, but maybe you can tell me what it is that affects you so much, and what's so heartbreaking about it?
Beyond the obvious heartbreak of.
Well, maybe it's obvious to you. It's not obvious to me. Tell me.
We gonna get this party up
Well,
in here?
anytime that you feel that there is an action that's unjustified, and there's nothing you can do about it, that's very difficult.
You know what?
I tend to not watch movies, Schindler's List, for example. I can't watch that because that really occurred.
That's just I never want to see that movie again either.
Another example that is probably my number one movie is Still Magnolias, and it is based on a true story. It's the sister of I think it's Robert Harlan. It's his sister, and what happens in the movie did happen with her, and that's very painful because you can't change it. So I generally have a rule where I don't watch movies, but Still Magnolias wasn't one of them. I believe the first time I watched it, I did not know that it was a true story. When with this movie, you know right away that there's something wrong with her. It's just not that the makeup man forgot to put lipstick and some, face powder on her face. They obviously did that to make her look a little sick in comparison to the other girls and other characters. And she did. So you get that sense right away. And of course, when she says, the line that gives you all the information you need and don't fall in love with me. And she's not saying it from I'm so wonderful. Everybody falls in love with me, but she's trying to protect him even then. And then to know that later when you find out that she has leukemia, and there's nothing he can do, there's nothing the father can do, there's nothing that her faith can do, and you have to accept it. And even though he knew his life was better at that time and later in life, because he wrote this as a man approaching his 60s, that he had to go through the pain in order to get, like she said, one of the lines from this movie is, without, I forget the word that she used, but, without sorrow, there's no happiness. You have to have, it's the yin and the yang. And So in order for them to be the people they were supposed to be, they had to experience her loss. And that's painful because the last thing you want is for that love to not grow and mature and be all that it could be. You don't want it to be cut short. So that's, you cry for the loss of that. And they did this, they brought his character around very nicely so that you did accept that he truly fell in love with her and he became the person he was supposed to be because of her. And he had to lose that. And yet he still had to hold on to what was good and not, have a death grip on what was bad.
I think also it might be in the context of the film that the character of Jamie here is she's kind of a blank slate, I would say. She doesn't have much of a strong character.
In the movie.
In the movie she does. I mean, that is. In the book she just, she's got plenty of character, but in the movie here she's kind of a blank slate, and I think that teenage girls would project themselves into her shoes and become her. And I guess there's something intriguing or drawing of being able to reform a bad boy, by just being yourself, by something like. Does that make sense? There's something kind of attractive about that quality that they're portraying this character of Jamie as a nobody special. She's nobody special. And that's easy for them to kind of project themselves onto, so
yes.
They can kind of put themselves in this movie and feel like, oh, I'm this girl I'm this nobody special, but deep down I really am. And oh, this one person notices me and changes my life. And maybe that's what makes it so attention grabbing for that audience. I don't know. Does that make sense?
I really don't know what you're talking about.
I think I'm either missing your point or not agreeing. I'm not sure which.
You'd be so beautiful.
I just meant that it's teenage girls want to be Manny Moore in this case. They want to be able to. They want to be this understated but pretty girl that is noticed. Maybe because they feel they aren't, given enough attention. But this one guy, this good-looking guy, who maybe seems dangerous on the outside and mysterious, really is this gentle soul on the inside.
And that being every girl's wish of this age to be that. Certainly.
And this was something else that was made up.
Completely, and I
don't like it.
Don't like it at all. It doesn't work. She would not have been. That's not true to her character. The one that they created in this movie, certainly not in the book. And so I was amazed when I watched it because it was so untrue. This just didn't work in any way.
Yeah, I don't like it either. It's just something that's over the top and cliched. I mean, even the friend character is completely over the top. I mean, this.
Yes.
I mean, this whole scene is right out of the screenplay high school 101 dictionary.
Yes.
Look at this. Look at this cafeteria. No cafeterias in real life look like this.
No,
this is
absolutely not.
This is obviously staged, and
Well, I thought, where are all the teachers? Where are the noon duty aides? They're sitting on the tables. You're not allowed to do that.
Yeah, and the friend acting kind of like a spurned lover almost. I thought it was a little much. He's like, we are through. And I'm like, what are we breaking up?
It's almost as if we had to be hit over the head with a bat by the ex-girlfriend in order to get that she's jealous. Well, we get that. We don't need to have this scene in the cafeteria where she tweaks the picture, photoshops her.
Yeah, and even I thought that was a little. They could come up with some kind of ruse to embarrass Jamie or something like that. But still, I thought even this device of altering a picture, I thought was kind of weak. I mean, I don't think that even by today's contemporary standards that would even be affecting. Like, people would just be like, oh, who cares? Like, anybody can do this on a computer in 10 seconds. You know, I don't think anybody would really, I don't think anybody would give a damn, really. I think they would just be like, oh, why is this funny? Because, I mean, here they're like, oh, this is the funniest thing ever, you know, but I just, I don't know if it works so much here, but.
I didn't feel it worked at all.
No, but they needed to do something to create a divide, you know, between his old life and his new life, and I guess that was serviceable, I guess. And here, you know, this kind of happens.
Yes.
Yeah, this kind of happens.
Yes.
In the book. He doesn't go to him in
church.
It's in his office, I guess.
It's
And
in the sanctuary.
and this is after they'd actually been seeing each other for a little while. And I don't think they were exclusive to the fact that, oh, we're boyfriend, girlfriend, but he had developed real feelings by this point. I don't think he had told anybody about it, but he had told us, the reading audience, about it, and he wanted to take her out. So he asked his mother, I think, what to do, because he's like, oh, what am I supposed to do? I go over to her house all the time, and I see her, we talk, and she's like, oh, you have to take her out and do something special. You know, women want to be treated like they're special, you know, so you have to take her out, do something. So the date they're about to go on was actually the suggestion of the mother, and she suggested, oh, take her to this place. She'll really like it.
Thank you.
This is for you.
And I think it was still on the waterfront. I think that they kept that.
Sweet tea, please.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Being practical, he didn't appear to have a job, and yet
Restaurants are really nice.
he took her to this fancy restaurant, and I just wondered where the money came from.
No, well, that's something there's a lot of things from the book that we haven't gotten to yet, but one of them being that in the novel he comes from a not incredibly wealthy family, but pretty wealthy, and it's set up in the book actually that
Would you like to dance?
his grandfather became rich from ripping people off, I guess is a shorthand way of saying it. His grandfather was alive during the Prohibition era, and I guess in the Depression era, and he ended up buying up a bunch of cheap property and then getting people to I just in a shorthanded way, he would just acquire a lot of property and then sell it off at a much higher price or something, but taking advantage of people, more or less, is what he did to acquire his fortune. And his his son, Landon's father, ended up not exactly following suit, but was given the opportunity to have a accessible career because he came from money. So his father became a lawyer, and it's kind of a big deal in the book that this lineage, and it sets up this bad blood between Landon's father and her father, Hegbert. They don't see eye to eye, and it's because they've been butting heads for the longest time. And here they don't have any relationship to each other at all. I mean, the one thing they do bring about that they shine a light on is the divide that happens between Landon and his father. Here it's like really like, oh, we don't like each other. We don't like each other. We hate each other. Even though we saw the dad show up at the play, he's like, oh, get away from me, and you've never been around. But in the book, he's around. He's just a working father. Being a lawyer and a politician, he's around. He goes around and he's doing his dealings, but he's just not home. And he understands that, but he still misses the fact that his dad isn't around. But they don't have that strained relationship, antagonistic relationship. All right, I gotta ask you about this scene, because a lot of girls I know think this is the cutest thing ever.
It is. It's absolutely adorable.
Okay, because I just thought that this was... He doesn't do this. This doesn't happen in the book.
No, but
No.
It was cute, and I could see the writer writing this.
It felt like it was in his
Yeah.
in his style.
And yes, I thought it was adorable,
Yeah, she doesn't actually.
along with the tattoo.
Yeah, well, you did. I don't know. That I can buy. The tattoo, I don't know so much about because isn't that kind of against religious practices or
No,
no? Well, for some it is.
no.
Well,
It's a temporary tattoo.
Desecration of the body or something like
No,
that.
it's not. It's a temporary tattoo.
Well, she did say, on her list, I want a temporary tattoo. She said tattoo.
Well,
So I always assumed that she meant a real one, but no. Well, I guess, I don't know, but I thought that worked more than the tattoo. I mean, this is obviously just so she can show a little skin, but that's fine. But that scene with, you're in two different places at once, it's always the same reaction. The ladies think that's the most adorable thing in the world, and I'm like, I guess it's kind of clever. I mean,
well, because it meant he took time to really think about what was on her list.
yeah, I guess it just seemed a little corny to me, but
It was, but corn is people's favorite vegetable, so it works.
I mean, I guess.
The thing I wondered here was she not wearing a bra, or did she take her bra strap down with her dress?
Yeah, not being a girl, I didn't even think about that. So obviously she's not wearing one.
Well, no, I think she probably was, but she just took the bra and her top and her dress, the top of the sleeve, and pulled it down in unison.
I don't think it doesn't look like she's wearing one, to be honest. I don't think she is.
No, she is.
Okay.
You're lucky to be so sure.
And he doesn't even know that she's not even sick yet. At least he doesn't know that.
No.
It's like the wind. I can't
What do you
see it, but I feel
what do you think of the setting? I mean, do you think that the setting of this movie has the kind of amount of impact that the setting of, say, Steel Magnolias does? Because Steel Magnolias takes place in the South as well.
yes.
Do you think that its Southern themes is present?
I do. It is another character in this movie. You definitely get the feeling that you're in a very special place, the restaurant on the water, and yes, I think it works.
Well, she was a novice at kissing too, and the kiss doesn't happen like this. That's right, it doesn't. Not in the book. It happens on the front porch, I think.
Yes.
He's kind of led there by his heart, I guess. He just had a conversation with his mother or something like that. I think he just admitted to her that he was falling in love with her,
Yes.
something like that, and he decided to just go and talk with her, and he just, did it on the spot. He just kind of, and I love you. He doesn't say that. No, not for a while. I think Sparks saved that line for much later.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
I think it was more effective later on.
I agree.
Now would be
That would be the time to say something.
Mm-hmm.
That's
I buy that she's 17, or he said 18. Do you know how old this actor was?
I think he was a little bit older than
Yeah.
that. He seems to be.
Yeah. And that's one thing I found with, I'd say overall, maybe 50% of the other characters looked too old, and the other 50% looked about right.
Oh, that's kind of convention of
Yeah.
a lot of high school movies. Not so much contemporary ones. Back in the 80s, it was a bit of a staple that they would have actors in their 20s playing teenagers. But nowadays, they're kind of going with actors that are a bit more fitting of their age. I mean, this movie, so some of these characters look a little too old. Like, she looks fitting.
Who was the girl with the very short, straight hair? I know her, but I don't know her name.
I don't recall.
Really?
No, not a fan. I think in some cases they kind of dressed her down a little too much. I think in this case.
Say goodnight to Mr. Carter.
it was, I don't know, a little too much. They were just trying a little too hard because
Good night.
it kind of stands out to me.
Good night, sir.
I don't know.
I felt it was true to her character. I felt it was appropriate.
You're acting with that boy like you were. Jamie, you are a child.
Dad. Look at me. I'm not a child.
And stop acting child.
He's a little bit forceful, a little too much. With his, I mean, in the book, he's very. They follow the the code of young love, and how to baby step around it, and follow the father's ways. But here it's, I don't like this kid, and be careful. But I don't know if this thing with the I don't know if I buy this whole astronomy subplot. I don't know if it does her hair look like it's shining a bit more. But anyway, I don't know if it.
I just left you out of it.
If they were gonna go with it, I think they should have gone with it. Really let us in. It's just kind of this. You don't really have to understand anything about astronomy, and they never really show anything through the telescope. It's just kind of just to give her an eccentricity, something, and I was just like, I don't know, something for them to do together. And I thought, well, I don't know if it really works, if it's really strong enough. And I mean, she never talks about astronomy or anything like that. Nothing.
That's what I thought.
And I was like, well, all she does is really just kind of have this telescope and say she's
It's
into
just
astronomy.
a device.
Yeah, too much so.
Yes,
and I was
I
like, well,
agree.
if they're gonna go with it, go with it. Have her really talk about it. Maybe visit a planetarium or have her talk about constellations to a greater degree and just tell us stuff that we don't normally know. I mean, we all know these normal constellations like Orion, and he mentions Pluto. Everyone knows what Pluto is, but we don't really get into the meat of it. And I thought it would have been interesting to do that. Is this where he gives her the?
Yes.
He has a star named after her.
Yes, I've had a star named after me.
Oh, you did?
Yes, one of my students.
Did they call it just the Susan star? Or?
Actually, it was star 87 because that's the number I always used. I would 87 million or 80. If I had to have a number, it was always 87. So it was star 87 for me.
Why? Where did 87 come from?
I don't know. Came from my head. I don't know why I have always used 87, but I always have.
I think she just said "I love you" back. I think that's the first time she does that. But did the first time? I think she left him hanging. I guess that's not a nice thing to do.
But there was an expression on her face when he said it, and she didn't say anything, and it was a pained expression. And of course, it was referencing back to, I told you not to fall in love with me, and you could tell that it wasn't a shocked, oh my gosh, I don't love him, he loves me, this is an awkward moment. Didn't have that quality at all. For me, it brought me back to what she said, and so I didn't feel pain for him other than the obvious pain of that he was going to experience when he found out there was something wrong with her.
Well, I just meant that. Yeah, that's true what you said. I just meant that in life, when someone says that, you need to hear something back right away. Is what I meant. It's just anything. Just don't leave it hanging out there. For all the world to see. But
Landon, be careful.
I have to make for continuity's sake, I have to point out some things here.
It's different with her, okay?
In terms of what time frame we're looking at, earlier in the movie, there's a reference to Jennifer Lopez when she did Selena, which takes us back 10 years at least, maybe more. Then there seems to be 2 or 3 different time frames that they're working in. It's like they couldn't quite agree what time frame they wanted to reference. So in order to make it appear a little more generic, they threw in things from different decades. Just had to insert that here.
Well, it could be they just wanted to make it timeless, not cement it in a particular decade or something like that.
Yes.
You're gonna have to work really hard.
I can do that.
Well, I think here he's, as opposed to the book, he's this version of Landon here is someone who isn't completely scholarly, even though maybe he's smart, as we found out when he was tutoring. He's not completely book smart, so he's having trouble, getting into school. But in the book, he's like, he wants to go to UNC, the University of North Carolina. And he's kind of toying with writing his letter to the school, and they played with that for a while. But there was never really any doubt that he was going to get in anywhere. He was always kind of a smart guy.
Citizen high to citizen love.
And that was, I think, another big line. Was that a touching line when he said, "Oh, she has faith in me"?
College applications?
Yes. Yes. And it was something that his mother could, because they didn't really pull out in this movie that he and his mother had a very good relationship. It had a much stronger relationship than it appears here. This I felt was very weak. All of a sudden, she decides she's sad. They edit from one scene to another, and she's looking depressed, and you think, okay, now she's going to tell him something's wrong with her. There was no transition to this, and I felt that was very weak.
Yeah, I think maybe what happened was maybe there was a deleted scene or something akin to something that was left on the cutting room floor, because it was a quick transition. But I think this movie is kind of going by the numbers in that sense of kind of peaks and valleys of.
This was too quick.
Why didn't you tell me?
Well, I meant just like, okay, they were at a high, now they have to go down to a low. He needs to be able to win her back, so they have to set that up. As a lot of conventional love stories go, there's the falling in love part, and then there's the separation, and then there's the coming back together. That's the way most go. So this is when the other shoe drops.
Yeah, to me it was too sudden. And also, if you take a look at her lips are pinker here than they were earlier in the movie, and yet she's supposed to be worse now than she was at the beginning of the movie. That was a continuity break, in my opinion. Because I thought, is she suddenly wearing lipsticks because she's getting worse? That didn't work for me.
Yeah, and I don't recall it being such a outwardly dramatic scene. I get while reading the novel, I didn't get that sense. I mean, it was sad, but it wasn't this big confrontation. And
they could have taken the time that he's taking to drive on the freeway to show us that his dad lived far from him. They could have taken that time and had a better transition to him going, you feeling okay?
It was rather sudden. I mean, it was just they were walking down the street and all of a sudden, oh, I'm sick, I forgot to tell you. Kind of a thing. Yeah, you're right. I guess they could have done that, but, well, we didn't write this movie, so, all we did was read the book and we watched the movie. That's it. But, yeah, I think you're right. It was a bit too quick, and, I mean, they're really hammering in the fact that he has chosen one life over another. I mean, we see them walking past his friends, his old friends, and they're like, ooh, you're not one of us anymore. You've chosen sides now. And it's just, in the novel, it was not that case at all.
No.
His friends they did poke fun at Jamie, and they did treat her as an outcast, but they really didn't care all that much. It wasn't omnipresent like it is here. They were just like, oh, where'd you go? Oh, you're hanging out with Jamie? Okay, that's weird. But it wasn't like, oh, you're out of it. You're out of the clique now, pal. We're not friends anymore. It wasn't the dramatic act that it is here, and neither it is with the father.
No.
I need help. Although the father does help in the book, but it did not have this strange
this is
relationship.
Wasted time, in my opinion.
You think so?
Yes.
Well, they need to show him thinking about it.
Yeah, but it's wasted time. I don't want to see the hood of that car anymore. And, you know, they just should have put the fake tears on him. He couldn't well up. So give us some more character development. And get rid of this stuff. We know he's in pain. We don't need to be hit over the head again. So this is many, many seconds that's, in my opinion, wasted.
Well, I think it's a montage. I mean, it's a convention of filmmaking these days. I mean, there's a lot of montages in this movie, this being one of them, but...
He almost looked like he was going to laugh there. He was probably laughing, thinking, they're not going to pay me if I don't cry.
I don't know. I thought it was... I mean, I don't like the scene. Not in the same way that you don't. I mean, I think it is a bit much. I think it goes on a bit too long.
It's contrived.
It is a bit, but I like... The one thing I like about it was we get to see a range of emotion that he goes through. He goes from sad to anger and then happiness, frustration, back and forth, back and forth. I kind of like seeing that. I mean, it's nice to, in a movie, when they just... Go ahead.
I'll stop you right there. That was an effective scene where he's standing there, he's looking off, you can tell he's thinking, he's having a range of emotions, and then his friend walks into the scene. That's all we needed. We didn't need that long thing of him driving in the car, trying to decide if he was going to laugh or cry. Finally was able to well up. And I always want to ask someone who's been asked to cry in a movie, did you think about your dog when it died, or what was it that triggered it for you? There are some people that can cry on cue, and other people that you can, short of taking all their money away from them, you can, there's nothing you can do to get a tear out of them. I felt badly for this character. I don't know the name of the actor. They gave him a little bit more depth as the story went on, but he was such a caricature at the beginning, and I thought, why do you do that? The audience is more intelligent than that, and I felt it rather offensive.
Yeah, I totally agree. He did start off as a caricature, totally, but I liked seeing him develop. That was another aspect of the movie that I liked, that this character was changed from the book to the movie, but he's the only character of his friends. It's really given a whole lot of depth, and I like to see that change in him.
Yes. And I like this where she just where he puts down the hood and there she is, and I thought that was effective. And now there's just this painful coming together again. Knowing that
I'm so sorry.
whether they continue
I made you do too many
to
things.
develop their relationship, there's no point at which they can not be hurt, either one of them. So it has to be this is a pivotal part of the movie, and it's interesting to watch with sound off. You could tell much more if how good the acting is. And they did this frequently in the movie, which I really liked because I think it was very telling of their relationship. And that was where they would put their foreheads together, which was a very innocent but effective way of showing a connection. And I really enjoyed it. And you could see them both kind of tilting toward each other and then moving back a little bit and then tilting forward again, like, okay, we're going to take this plunge. We're going to be together, and then their heads come back together again. And I just felt it was very effective because it was a thread that continued throughout this movie, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the innocence of it. I felt it really reflected the character. This is cute. I like this scene. I would have liked to have seen a few more scenes like this with the mother, and more scenes with the father, the girl's father, Jamie's father.
It's too bad that the scene was montaged. This dancing scene. It's truncated. I mean, I would have liked to have seen more of Daryl Hannah. Give the adults more screen time. And I recall in the this has got to be his house. Because I recall in the novel, this is something he called his escape hatch. He actually had this kind of balcony out on the outside of his room. That's one phrase that I remember. But so she's sick right now, right? And she actually already gave the line. Well, he said, "Oh, I pushed you too hard." She's like, "Oh, you kept me healthy," which is another aspect of the book that was brought over. It's a little different here, but oh, you kept me healthy. Actually, you know,
the main thing again that bothers me about this is that she actually looks better at this point than she did at the beginning, and I want to go to the makeup man and say, "I think you reversed it here. She wasn't dying at the beginning. She's now dying."
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing. She's the most attractive sick person I've ever seen. I mean, she's throughout her entire sickness, even so. But you're right. I mean, she still looks healthy, even now. So, and this reconnection with the friend here, and I mean, they come to blows here in the movie. You know, he punched him in the face. In the novel, nothing like that. They don't get too estranged. They just kind of drift apart. But the way they come back together is on the same. It's on the friend's volition. He comes back with his girlfriend, and they apologize to Jamie in her house after she'd been sick for a while. But you know, I kind of liked this kind of manly apology kind of a thing that happens in the movie here. It's kind of a thing. I guess you'd have to be a guy to really understand. Guys don't really you know, get down deep and apologize to each other. I mean, we just don't. The way he apologized to him is he offers to help him. That's his way of saying it. You kind of just glaze over it and you're like, oh, you need a hand, and all is forgiven. That's kind of the way guys kind of go about emotional things, at least that I've found. What did you think for her acting right there when she fell?
Again, I think, you know, they needed to give us a little bit more. They needed to give a little more time before she, you know, passes out, and at least they have an IV hooked up to her. I love it when people are in the hospital and they've just come out of major surgery and they have, I've had a couple of operations, and you come out of surgery with, you know, manufacturers behind you because of everything that they have plugged into you. So that was a little more true to life. But they don't talk about things like, you know, why didn't she have a bone marrow transplant? You know, that I would have liked to have heard. At least it brought up, we tried to do this, and this, and there's nothing. There's just the reference right at the beginning. I fared well at the beginning 2 years ago when I was diagnosed, but now the treatments aren't working. Well, what are the treatments? What's different? Obviously she hasn't had a bone marrow transplant. Why is that? Was that discussed? I want to know that. And if it wasn't discussed, why wasn't it discussed? And the fact that this is based on a true story, that the writer's sister, as was the case with Still Magnolias, did die of leukemia. That's a big thing to leave out. Probably not something that he had any control over once he sold the rights to the studio.
Well, now that we're in this section when she's openly sick and dying, you know, this is I don't know if it works quite as well as it does in the novel. It's given much more weight and time and description. The things they do together actually go on for a long time. Here they montage it, you know, which is unfortunate. I think they do a little too much montage in this movie. And what happens in the novel, if you recall, she gave him her Bible, if you remember.
Yes.
That was a big deal.
Yes.
And the Bible was a big deal in the novel. She gave him, which was her mother's, which I forgot to mention. It was her mother's, so it was an heirloom. It was a big deal. And that's why she always carried it around with her, because he always asked, why do you carry this around? He just thought she was a religious nut or something like that. She's like, no, it was my mother's. And so it was obviously very sentimental and special to her. And also the being a person of faith, it was very, she would read it, and it was the contents of it were special. So she gave it to him after he'd given her a new sweater. It was the only thing she could give that actually would mean anything, and that was a big deal. And they really glazed over that, which I thought was a mistake.
I agree.
He did give her the sweater here, but she didn't give him anything in return. But what could you give a girl like that would? I mean, what could she give that would mean something?
Well, and also when she does give him a book, she says it's not a Bible, and that was not true to her character.
Well, I mean, it's when you think story-wise, what could this character give Landon that would mean anything? I mean, she could give him something superficial like, he's a motorhead, so he's working on his car. She could give him fuzzy dice or something like that hanging from a mirror. No, but she gives him something that's personal,
yes.
And that means something, and it really does mean something. That they don't use it. What were you going to say?
I don't believe this was in the novel that I recall.
No, not at all. I mean, he has an estranged relationship with this character who is Belinda, I think, in the movie, but in the book she's Angela, which is his ex-girlfriend.
It's like she chose
he has an estranged relationship with her, but they don't have this makeup session here. No.
I do.
But all of the friends of his life have to come full circle, like his other friend did. So that makes sense. But as I was saying about this Bible. They spend most of the time with her being sick, reading the Bible. That's how they're able to maintain their connection. Because at first, see, look at that, she doesn't look sick. But anyway, at first they try having small talk, and they're like, okay, this isn't going to work. So he takes the Bible, and they start reading that together, and that's what kind of keeps her going. And one thing I found that was kind of touching was he found a passage in there that she had underlined, and it was something about death or fear or something like that. And that was her way of telling him, this is how I feel. I'm scared, and I don't know what to do. And so he thought, okay, well,
don't worry, it's not a Bible.
There's the line.
There's the line right there. Yeah, it was my mother's. See, this is something they changed.
Yes.
From my favorite books.
But they kept that heirloom sensibility. It's my mother's, and it's a quote book. So they're going to do a quote here that's actually, I think, from the Bible.
Okay. Oh, love is patient?
Yeah.
Corinthians 13.
Yeah, so, but here it's, this is just a book of quotes. But as I was watching this movie last night, I was like, wait a minute, that's in the book, and it's from the Bible.
Yeah, so, they don't tell you, they don't reference that was 1 Corinthians 13 that they were reading, which I thought was a shame. But then again, like you had pointed out earlier, they're dealing with a different audience. But I mean, it's one of the more well-known passages from the Bible, and I think it was I think it was a disservice and kind of a diss to the importance that the author put on it to not at least identify it as scripture.
He was never jealous.
Yeah, I kind of wonder how Nicholas Sparks.
It was paraphrased as well.
Yeah, well, I didn't know that, but I kind of wonder how Nicholas Sparks feels about a lot of his work being adapted. He seems like a pretty easygoing guy. I've seen interviews with him. He seems really down to earth, just a nice guy. Very rooted in faith and family, but just a nice guy. And he's done commentaries on his movies, and I gotta wonder, like, how does that feel to have your work altered like that? Especially this, where I noticed, wow, there was a lot changed, and I'm like, well, because it came from something so personal, the death of your sister. You gotta wonder, like, did he maybe ask, do you have to change it so much? Like, can you keep it intact some way? Something like that. Like, why do you have to change it? But I don't know what the behind the scenes were on that.
Yeah, and I think the scenes with the friends, especially at the beginning, that had to be. As imagining myself as the writer of this, it would be very difficult for me to see characters that I took time to build depicted in such a superficial way, and like caricatures of teenagers, which is rarely reflective of how they really are.
No. I mean, they can be. They can be super. I mean, they can be that cliched thing in moments, but not all the time. But
Not all the time.
I thought, here,
Yeah.
what were you gonna say?
Well, once again, this is like, bam. She looks well enough to go home. When they wheel her out of that room, I thought, oh, she's doing better. Well, no, she's not doing better. She gets private care. Apparently that makes the makeup man come into the room and put more makeup on her.
Well, as much as I didn't like I did like this aspect of it. The fact that they made his relationship with his father kind of strained. Maybe it's because I'm a guy. I could relate to it a little easier than... I just think it's more of a guy thing. I think that's I'm able to relate to this scene from the separation that the father and son have had throughout the whole movie, and then we get to see them reunite, because there's always some kind of inkling in the back of the child's mind, a boy, that he'll maybe will never live up to his father's expectations, or will somehow fail to just be good in his eyes, or something like that. I think it's just because the first hero in your life is your father, so the first person you want to be like is your dad. He's the strongest man in the world. He's he's all the apples in the barrel. He's just he's the ideal man. So he's the first person you want to impress, and at the end, I think that person you want to impress the most. Did you find this confusing when you first saw this as to what he was building?
No, and I also wanted to point out that he transitioned fairly seamlessly between his real father and then this Jamie's father, who's treating him like a son, and he's accepting him in a more open way than his own father, which wasn't in the book at all.
No. Yeah, the Hegbert kind of comes like this father figure to him here. Did you? I kind of wish he would have maybe painted this a little bit. I don't know. It always looked a little goofy to me. The fact that it looks a little too industrial.
Well, I think that's supposed to express the importance of time. That he didn't have time to do anything other than put it together.
Well, I don't know. Did you answer my question though? Did you find it a little bit confusing as to what he was doing here, building this telescope? Did you know he was building a telescope? Did you?
Yes, I did.
Okay, because I remember hearing some people just having this odd reaction to the scene. They were like, what was he doing out there for the longest time? And they're like, oh, okay, telescope, that makes sense. And do you find this a little hard to believe, the fact that he could throw this together seemingly so quickly? Telescopes aren't easy to make, and he made a rather large one.
Yes. Again, I think we're just have to accept it because it's movie magic.
I don't know, I think it was a little much to me anyway, but I was thinking about how I asked how you felt, why this movie moved you, made you cry, and you gave me a reason, and I had my reasons as to why I thought teenage girls maybe responded to it. Now, why do you think you wept at the end of this movie, but not at the end of, say, Titanic?
Well, I think I'm in a very small group of people that didn't like Titanic.
Well, explain why. Why is this movie touching, that one doesn't?
Well, first of all, the reason there was no reason for those deaths. Had it been, I'm always filled with such anger toward the people who made the decisions that they made and killed those people. That it makes it, my anger is greater than my sadness for the people that were lost. And it's not just at the people who were in power, but also the people who, the worst came out in people, at least it seems that way. And so anger is my prevailing emotion over a sense of loss.
That makes a lot of sense. I guess a lot of people do skim over that fact that it was a real tragedy and think that these characters really did exist on this boat 100 years ago. I think a lot of people actually went to the cemetery where a lot of the passengers were buried, and there is a tombstone that says J. Dawson, but it's just a coincidence, you know. But okay, now I gotta ask you, during this scene here, were you choked up?
Love is never boastful.
No.
No, you weren't.
I was thinking, how is he going to afford to be married? Again, the practical side of me. Were they going to live with her father? Were they going to live with her?
They didn't think
with the
about
mother?
That. Well, they didn't think about that. I mean, they're obvious. She knows she's not going to live that long anyway.
I know, but I want to know where they lived.
And to endure.
I'm sure that didn't even cross their minds. They probably just lived separate from each other.
I don't think so.
You don't think so? I think it was.
No.
I was just. It's kind of more of a ceremonial gesture. You know, let's get married. You know, I never really took into account the long haul of where they were going to live afterwards. But this scene, I mean, she doesn't look sick. Does she look sick? No, she doesn't look sick at all. At this point in the story, she's supposed to be incredibly ill, and she's lost like a lot of weight. She's like skin and bones. She's frail.
And they didn't depict that at all.
No, she can't. She can barely walk, get out of bed. She's barely conscious most of the time. And this wedding is what were you about to say?
With more love.
They had a perfect summer together. So you know they were together.
Yeah, they were together. Well, yeah. But it didn't even cross my mind. That's funny that you thought about that. I just didn't even think about it. But in the story, yeah, she's getting married is something she's wanted to do, and it's this great epiphany to him at the end. It's like, oh, that's what she was trying to tell me. That's what I need to do, because he couldn't figure out what else he could do, because there was nothing he could do at this point. She was dying, and he was visiting her, but he felt that he could have done something more, and he was missing something, and where that message was coming from, be it from God or from her, he just wasn't finding it. And then finally he found it. It's like, okay, that's what it was. That's what I have to do. She has to get married. So they finally get married. Here he just kind of has this notion on his own. So they get married, and that scene there during the whole wedding, she was barely able to walk down the aisle, as I recall in the book. She was in a wheelchair, actually. Like she walked down the aisle with her father, because that was a big deal. She wanted to walk down the aisle to prove that she could do it, and she did. But as she got down to Landon, to the priest, to her father, to the minister, she got back into her wheelchair, and I guess that could seem a little awkward looking. For movie's sake,
definitely.
For a movie's sake, yeah.
Yes.
It would look kind of goofy, I guess. That chose not to do it that way.
They threw out a lot of the rules of reality in order to make this within the time frame that they had. And also, like you said, it was geared toward a much younger audience than the book was geared to. So the sensibilities were very different.
He's given the book of quotes back. I don't recall that if in the novel if he attempted to give the Bible back to Hagbert or not. I don't recall. I don't think so.
I don't believe so.
Yeah,
I would think I would remember that. And that's something that it was something that she shared more with him than she did with her father.
I mean, did you think this kind of coda on the story was really necessary? You know, him to go visit and make amends with, her father. Did you really think that was wholly necessary, or was it just a bit too much at the end of this movie?
I think it's a good wrap-up ending. It's a Hollywood ending. You know, life doesn't usually wrap up that neatly, but that's one of the things we like about Hollywood, is it gives us these nice little packages that we get at the end.
Well, you said you weren't crying during the wedding scene.
No.
What scenes moved you the most, do you think?
When I knew she was gone.
Oh, you mean so afterwards here when you knew she was?
Well,
for instance,
you knew when, just prior to them getting married, that she was already gone. That she just had to go through the motions. And so knowing that was going to happen before it did was when I cried.
So would you, even though you pointed out...
And there it is, in loving memory of Danielle Sparks Lewis and Jimmy Everest.
So even though you pointed out some faults in the film, because I wasn't sure how you were going to feel about this, but you pointed out some of the faults the movie had with editing and some cliche characters and whatnot. But overall, you seemed to enjoy it.
Yes, I did.
I recall when you were watching a part of this movie maybe a week or so ago, and you missed the first half, but you saw the second half, and I was like, oh, she's going to watch the movie. What's she going to think about it? But you watched it, and I walked in on you watching it, and you were completely absorbed into the movie, and you had this big smile on your face. And I think it was that scene where he took her to the state line, and you had this big smile on your face, and I was like, oh, she loves it. And I was like, okay, that's how she's gonna like it. So even with all its faults, though, you did find, well, not all, like it has a lot, but even with those things that you pointed out, you do enjoy it.
Yes, I did. And having watched the movie the first time halfway through, or maybe 3/4 of the way, I missed the largest part of the movie where he was so irritating and the other characters were so irritating. So really that was probably its biggest fault, in my opinion. I didn't get that with the first viewing when I can't say exactly where I came in, but the characters, the additional characters, the superfluous ones, were already removed, and he had more depth, more layers. He was moving into the man he was going to be, and so I missed that initial part. But even now, having seen the entire thing, I still think it works, because it's telling us a timeless story, and that is you have to be true to yourself. And she was from the beginning, and he learned that from her. And you knew that he would live his life, and she would continue through him. So that's a timeless message. And yes, there were problems with some of the characterizations for me, but overall, I think I enjoyed it. I think it was a good movie, and it talked about triumph of the human spirit and heart over adversity.
Well, just to wrap up for me before the credits end, I think it's been an interesting experience for myself, having reread the book almost 15 years later and having a different take on it. I think it was just interesting to see the way my mentality has changed, and then to go back and give this movie another chance, because as I said, I had a negative reaction to both of these, and as I said, I'm reading another Nick Sparks novel, and it's pretty good so far. So I don't know. I think it's just something that happens with age. I mean, maybe you just become more open to things and more willing to give things another chance. So I was glad to be able to take a look at this movie as well, to see how it, compared to the book. I think the book was more successful at that, but I think the movie still is. I think the movie is more hit than miss. I'll say that.
I agree.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. If you made it all the way through, I really appreciate for sticking by. The movie's over, but again, just wanted to say thank you. So until next time, this is Josh from the Soulless Minions of Orthodoxy saying good night.
And this is Susan. Glad you could join us. Hope you enjoyed the movie and our talk about it, and maybe it'll make you go out and pick up the book and experience more depth of character.